What's going on, Ram fans? Welcome back. Mark from Rams Up here. Another Rams Up update, and I'm just going to get into 13 random thoughts about our Los Angeles Rams and the NFL in general, trying to fill the void. It's a little bit of the NFL doldrums right now. The first wave of free agency behind us, waiting for some more stuff to happen, and signings are trickling in. Tutu Atwell, and then we had Ronnie Rivers and Ahkello Witherspoon. Maybe some more signings are coming our way for the Los Angeles Rams. We'll just in wait and see mode. But man, really excited about the draft. Can't come soon enough. It's going to be fun. So let's get through this, shall we? What do I got here for you? The first thing I wanted to talk about, well, on the podcast, this is episode 689, almost 700 episodes. Hard to believe. And I'll talk real quickly about a player who wore number 89. Remember wide receiver Dane Looker? Came out of the University of Washington, went undrafted. Rams brought him into camp and then promptly traded him to the New England Patriots. He stuck with the Patriots for a little bit, got cut. The Rams re-signed him and sent him to Europe. And he was the MVP of the World Bowl, playing for Berlin. And then got on the Rams 53-man roster finally, played for them from 2002 through 2007, 112 catches, 1,224 yards, and 5 TDs. Not too shabby for an undrafted free agent, a World Bowl MVP, and had a decent little career for our Los Angeles Rams. It was St. Louis at the time, but Dane Looker, number 89. Now, the first thought I have is, where are we with our free agent situation? The Rams unrestricted free agents brought some guys back, and a few players escaped us. There are 4 that I'm aware of. I count 4 Rams unrestricted free agents still on the open market. Linebacker Troy Reeder. Now, the signing of Nate Landham, I think, pretty much erases any chance of Reeder coming back. He is so similar and I don't think as good as Omar Speights and Nate Landham. So I think his LA Rams days are over. And then there's Connor McDermott, an offensive tackle. He's still out there. Safety John Johnson. Rams always seem to keep him waiting in the lobby until they really need him. I think he could still make his way back onto this roster. We have 4 really good safeties, but a little bit shallow on the depth department, I think. And then there's offensive tackle Joe Noteboom. And I'm going to talk about McDermott and Noteboom. I have another thought on those 2, but those are the 4 guys still out there that haven't gotten away yet. And let's talk about the cornerback situation. Now that Ahkello is back, a lot of guys here, for those of you on the podcast, I'll share the visual verbally with you. We got Witherspoon, Darius Williams, Kobe Durant, Emmanuel Forbes, Darion Kendrick, Charles Woods, Josh Wallace, and there are some other guys, including Sean Jolly. Trey Tomlinson, of course, has moved on to the 49ers. I still feel like we could add a player here. I just don't know, if we're going to add a player, hopefully he's a guy that can contribute. Would we use a first-round pick on a cornerback? I'm not so sure. But this group hasn't really improved. Now, the one way it maybe has improved, and we discussed this on our roundtable the other night, is that for the first time ever, Ahkello Witherspoon will be in a Rams camp. They always seem to sign him at the last minute. He'll go through all the training, all the mini camps and everything else with the Rams for the first time. So that's good. But what if they decide to draft a cornerback now? And that's my second thought. I wanted to talk about a guy that is getting mocked to the Rams suddenly quite a bit. Trey Amos out of Ole Miss, 6'1", 195 pounds. And there were some concerns about his speed. And then he went off at 4.43 at the combine. pretty fast, put to rest any concerns about his speed. Lance Zierlein, his comments on Amos were possesses foot quickness and size to be a problem in press, has body control and footwork to cover routes, twitchy burst and long arms, plant and drive is sudden. And so, a lot of experts seem to think the Rams could go that direction. Now, I don't know if they're going to have a change of heart after this Witherspoon signing. I have a feeling they will. And another guy that has been mocked to the Rams, another cornerback, Azare Thomas, Jared Verse's teammate. And if you look at Lance Zierlein's rankings, Amos is just a tad above Thomas. So I think either one of them could be valid selections for the Rams if they decide to go that direction. What the Rams have done here so far is pretty much status quo. Pretty much the same group they had last year. And is it good enough? Well, it was good enough last year to almost get us to an NFC championship game and potentially a Super Bowl. And with this pass rush the Rams are going to have, a really good defensive line, maybe this unit will be good enough, and maybe Trey Amos will not make it onto the Rams roster. I suspect they'll draft a cornerback at some point. It's just, trying to figure out what the Rams are going to do in the first round is quite a challenge because they have so much flexibility now. And it'll be interesting to see. It'll be fun to watch. Now, there are 2 rule changes of note that I wanted to share. There's quite a few rule change proposals. And one of them submitted by Green Bay is to make the Tush Push illegal, to stop the Philadelphia Eagles from having their big linemen come up behind their quarterback and push them into the end zone. And, I thought that at one time was illegal at the college level anyways, because I remember there was quite a stir when the Trojans did exactly that. I think it had to do with Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart maybe. That's if my memory is serving me correctly. But it's obviously legal in the NFL, and the Packers would like to end that. And the rule would basically be to prohibit an offensive player from pushing a teammate who was lined up directly behind the snapper and receives the snap immediately at the snap. And now, how do I feel about it? Well, I'm going to be selfish. The Rams are one team that will probably never employ this, not as long as Matthew Stafford is the quarterback. So I'm all for it. And I think the Eagles are the Rams' biggest obstacle as far as getting back to the Super Bowl. So yeah, hey, let's make it illegal. I'm 100% behind this rule change. And I do think that, having offensive linemen or guys the size of offensive linemen and big fullbacks and such, pushing your quarterback into the end zone is a little bit against the spirit of the rules of the game. But hey, that's just me. And the second rule change has to do with playoff seeding, and the Minnesota Vikings, interestingly, submitted this. The Detroit Lions submitted this, and the reason it's interesting is because last season it really would have benefited the Vikings. And basically, and we've heard discussions of this in years past, let's not base the seeding on, the top four divisional champions are 1 through 4. Let's do it by record. If a second place team is 11-6 and a divisional winner is 9-8, the divisional winner is the lower seed. And Mike Garofalo on this visual here points out that he reached out to the NFL Research, the folks at NFL Research. Now, I don't know why he needed to do that. It wouldn't be that hard to figure it out, but last year, if this rule had been in place, the Rams would have traveled to play Philadelphia, Tampa Bay would have played at Minnesota, and the Packers would have played at Washington in the wild card round. So it would certainly change things up a little bit. And I think right now, the NFC North is thinking, hey, we're going to have the better records in our division, and the Lions thinking maybe this time it's going to be them. But, this is, a trend thing. It'll reverse, and there will be years where it's going to hurt the NFC North. So kind of short-sighted, I think. You think it's going to benefit you this year or next. That might always be the case. Maybe just leave the seeding the way it is. Something to be said about winning your division because the schedules are different, obviously. And to say that a second place team at 11-6 is better than a divisional winner, that's not necessarily the case. So we'll see what happens. I have a feeling that'll get rejected. The Tush Push, yeah, I'm not sure they're going to pass that either, but I would be okay. I'd be okay with either of these rule changes. Really, don't really care that much, but outlawing the Tush Push would be good for our Los Angeles Rams come playoff time for sure. Hey, my fifth observation here, my fifth thought, I should say, the last word on Cooper Kupp, and my special assistant sent this to me. Someone on Twitter, the Coach Speak Index, pointing out that the Rams obviously loved Cooper Kupp. He was such a big part of this franchise for the entire time he was here. Just a stand-up citizen and player and locker room guy and a great player as well. And the Rams just wanted nothing to do with him moving forward. And their analytics program, their analytics department is so good, one of the best in the league. I think they've proven that. They know when to move on from guys. They have a pretty good track record in that department. And the fact that they were ready to move on from Cooper Kupp, that should have been a red flag to other teams. And in fact, it might have been a red flag to the Cowboys. Apparently, Cooper Kupp, Dak Prescott, and CeeDee Lamb all on the line together talking about bringing Cooper Kupp on board until they heard the price tag and they said no thanks, and he ends up in Seattle. Now, I'm not wishing the worst for Cooper Kupp, just pointing out that maybe us Ram fans shouldn't be sulking too much that Cooper Kupp has moved on. Wish him the best, but it might have been the right time for the Rams to move in a different direction. My sixth thought here, I wanted to talk about the 49ers, a little 49er forecast here. Obviously, we're all aware of all the guys that have left the 49ers, just a big shakeup in Santa Clara. And John Lynch had an interesting comment. By the way, they have 11 draft picks, so they are well positioned to improve this roster, but they got to nail it. They've had some misses recently. I mean, all the guys leaving San Francisco, but Jake Moody, the third round pick, the kicker, is still there. He hasn't worked out very well. They haven't moved on from him. But John Lynch saying, I'm quoting here, we've got some big things coming our way, and you have to clear the requisite room to be able to do that. And I'm not sure how much sense that makes to me. Thinking through this logic, yeah, you have 11 draft picks and you're going to make some changes. So you just let a bunch of good players walk away to make room for a bunch of rookies. I don't know. Something smells rotten in Denmark to me, but John Lynch trying to paint a pretty picture for the 49er fan base. That's basically what he's doing, and I guess he's got no choice. But hey, Mr. Lynch, you're going to have to nail this draft, or it's going to be a long 1, 2, or 3 years for the 49ers, in my opinion. Now, they do have the last place schedule in the NFC West, and that's something they can lean on. It gives them hope, regardless what happens, because they still got some good players there for sure. Now, I want to talk about Jaxson Dart for a second. Mel Kiper was talking about the quarterback. I love this guy, by the way. And he was pointing out that don't be surprised if the Saints draft Dart with the 9th overall pick. And he also went on to say, if he gets by the Saints, might not be too many other teams interested in a quarterback until you get to number 26, the Los Angeles Rams. He thinks that it could be the Saints, and if not the Saints, the Rams drafting Jaxson Dart. That would be pretty exciting. Does that make our team better this year? Probably not, but it'll basically maybe settle the question who our next great quarterback is. I'd be pretty excited about that. I don't expect that to happen, but hey, in Snead we trust, and Sean McVay as well. If they love Jaxson Dart and they want him to be our next great quarterback, I'll roll with that. NFL.com had a list of teams trending upward. This is my 8th thought, by the way. And at the top of the list were the Bears. And why? Ben Johnson coming on board as their new head coach, great offensive mind, and a rebuilt offensive line that includes Jonah Jackson, by the way. The Cincinnati Bengals getting Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on board with big contracts. Joe Burrow is extremely happy. The Commanders adding Deebo Samuel, and the Rams adding Devontae Adams. Now, I think they got 2 out of 4 right. I think the Bengals are going to be really good. I mean, basically, again, status quo, same guys they had last year. But this is not necessarily the way to build a championship team, what the Bengals are doing here. But I still think they're going to be pretty darn good. But they're really going to be hamstrung salary cap wise for a while. It's going to be hard to build that roster in other ways. And the Commanders and Deebo Samuel, maybe this will rejuvenate Deebo, maybe motivate him to get in a little bit better shape. I think he'd be a great weapon for the Commanders, provided he kind of, what I just said, gets himself into shape, maybe a little bit of an attitude adjustment, focus, and it could be a really big deal for the Commanders. I don't know if I'd put them at the top of my list of teams trending. Again, another team that's going to be pretty good, but I don't know if Deebo Samuel is the difference maker there. Hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's my 49er bias showing through, but that's how I feel about this list. And they had some other teams on there, but these were the 4 at the top of the list. My 9th thought, I wanted to talk about Caleb Williams. I was going to share this quite a while ago, and I don't think I got around to it. If I'm rehashing this, I apologize. But, there's a guy out there that's a pretty good quarterback savant, Greg Cosell, and he's been joining some podcasts talking about the quarterbacks he likes and doesn't like in this draft. And one of them he's a little bit cool on is Shedeur Sanders. And it's the same reason that he thinks Caleb Williams is struggling. And he pointed out that NFL teams have done some intense studies on the relationship between the number of times a quarterback gets sacked at the college level and how that turns out at the pro level, and is definitely a correlation. Now, Caleb Williams sacked 80 times in 2 years at USC, and then his rookie year in Chicago sacked 68 times. That's a third most in NFL history. The third most, only David Carr and Randall Cunningham sacked more in one season. So what I'm concerned about with Caleb Williams moving forward is this offensive line that they're rebuilding, is that really the answer, or is it a Caleb Williams problem? I think he's going to get better, but the fact that he's getting sacked so much, you don't always put it on the offensive line. It's his ability to read defenses, find his primary receivers, make decisions, and get rid of the ball. So we will have to see how this progresses. Now, he's got Ben Johnson in his corner, so that's a good thing. But it also, this data that Greg Cosell is sharing is definitely going to hurt Shedeur Sanders' draft stock, I think. Getting sacked at the college level, I don't care how bad your offensive line is, it's not a mark in your favor come draft time for sure. What else we got? Moving on to my thought number 10 real quickly. I saw an article, a headline really. The Vikings look like they're done with the possibility of drafting or I should say signing Aaron Rodgers. Well, I would hope so. J.J. McCarthy, give him the reins. You had Daniel Jones there. Obviously, Sam Darnold, it made sense for him to move on. Just roll with J.J. McCarthy. Keep a veteran in-house to back him up. You don't need Aaron Rodgers in that clubhouse. I'm surprised that they were even considering it. Maybe they weren't. Maybe it was just clickbait for a couple of weeks. I saw this story and I couldn't believe that was even a consideration for Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings. And man, I hope they don't do that. I think it's really bad. Hey, maybe I should be rooting for it because the Vikings are a team, another team the Rams might have to go through in come playoff time. And if they're going to make bad decisions, have at it. My 11th thought, I wanted to review our defensive starters. Now, what I'm showing here on the YouTube channel is basically the starters and key backups. And I got more than 11 guys out there because, sometimes you're going to have a linebacker out there. Sometimes you're going to have extra DBs. So I got Kobe Durant and Witherspoon out there. Still have Quentin Lake lined up next to Omar Spates and the two safeties, Kinchins and Curl, and the outside linebackers, Jared Verse and Byron Young, and a solid front three of Kobe Turner, Poona Ford, and Braden Fisk. And then, of course, we have Laurel Murchison, Nate Landham, Tyler Davis, Jalen McCullough. These are the key backups, in my opinion. Darion Kendrick, Emmanuel Forbes, two backup edge rushers, Nick Hampton and Brandon Jaxson, and then Deshaun Johnson as well. So pretty solid unit. I want another difference maker, but just wanted to update this with the addition of Ford and Witherspoon, and looking good. And Landman as a backup, probably a backup inside linebacker. I think he's going to get a lot of snaps one way or another. Certainly be a big contributor on special teams at a minimum. So that is my update of LA Rams starters. Now we're going to move on to power rankings. I ran across some power rankings and Jeff Kerr of CBS shared his. And before I looked, I went and built mine out. And at the top two, we both agreed the Eagles and Lions. This is, post first wave of free agency power rankings. So Eagles and Lions at the top. And I think the Lions could dip a little bit this year. Just got a gut feeling they're going to drop off, losing their two coordinators. I had the Rams at 3 and the Commanders at 4, the Packers at 5, the Vikings at 6. They had, Jeff Kerr, I should say, had the same 4 teams in a different order. He had them the Commanders, Vikings, Rams, and Packers. So, hey, I could go either way, throw those 4 names up in there, see how they land. I wouldn't have a big argument against it. I feel pretty strongly that the Vikings would be at the bottom of that group, though, and he has them at 4, right above the Rams. We both had the 49ers at 7, and then the last 3 teams I had, I just went the top 10, the Bucks, Falcons, and Bears. He had the Seahawks, Bears, and Bucks. So I'm giving the Bucks a little bit more love than he is. They always seem to come through. We've been underestimating them for a few years now, and maybe I'm giving a little too much love for the Falcons. And yeah, he's got the Seahawks at 8, and I thought about that, and I considered having them in the top 10, and they could very easily be right there in that 8, 9, 10 slot. But I have to see a little bit more with a new quarterback. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf both moving on. Have they really fixed their offensive line? So there's a lot of unknowns in Seattle, a lot of change going on, and they could prove me entirely wrong and be an extremely competitive team. But right now, that's my gut feeling, and I reserve the right to change my mind, maybe even by tomorrow. And the last thing I want to talk about, my 13th thought, who are our backup tackles? And this has been keeping me up at night. Hey, across the interior, love what we've done. Got Steve Avila. I guess it's Coleman Shelton, maybe Bo Limmer, and then Kevin Dotson. The backups, Dedich, Dylan McMahon, and either Shelton or Bo Limmer, right? Solid. Love what we've done there. No issues. And then our starters at left and right tackle, Alaric Jaxson and Rob Havenstein. And then our backups right now would be Warren McClendon and AJ Akuri. Now, two Ram tackles are free agents, Connor McDermott and Joseph Noteboom. And Rams haven't done anything to improve this group yet. I mean, bringing back Jaxson, obviously. We're back to, again, status quo, but not depth-wise. We have some issues there. And if we don't have a backup, an emergency tackle that we can count on, we could be in trouble. This could all blow up on us. And maybe McClendon's that guy. I don't think Akuri is. And there's some free agents out there aside from McDermott and Noteboom, but the ones that I think would qualify as solid backups are going to be too expensive. Guys like, who we got? Jedrick Wills, Cam Robinson, Kendall Lamb coming off an injury. I just don't think the Rams are going to spend that kind of money for a backup. And, Joseph Noteboom, he did that restructure, kind of did the Rams a solid there, but now he's a $10 million dead cap hit. So I don't know if it makes sense. I don't know how the contracts situation would work out if they tried to bring him back. And I know a lot of Ram fans aren't a fan of him, would not be a fan of bringing him back. But you could do a lot worse than Joseph Noteboom. He can play left and right tackle. Pretty solid in the run department. Pro Football Focus gives him a rating of over 70 last year, and he did have 4 starts, played a little left tackle, played a little right tackle. And remember, he stepped up in that playoff win over Tampa Bay a couple years back, was really good, even in pass protection. So he can get it done. The Rams can use a first-round pick to find that guy, the eventual replacement for Rob Havenstein, and address the depth issue. I don't know if I'm a fan of that. I'd rather they get a real difference maker for this year. So this is a little bit troubling for me. What are the Rams going to do? And I would not be opposed to bringing Noteboom back again. I don't know how that contract situation would work out with a $10 million cap hit, dead cap hit already. I'll leave that to the other experts that know contract stuff better than I. But hey, Rams got to figure this out one way or another. Noteboom or McDermott, bringing one of those guys back, finding a street free agent, an unrestricted free agent they can bring in at the right price, or spend a relatively high draft pick on a tackle. So I'm not sure where they go here, but they better address it. Something we haven't talked enough about, in my opinion. What are we doing with our backup tackles? That's it. That's all I got. Those are my 13 thoughts here in late March. We'll be back soon with some more content. Look at some free agency news. Hopefully there's something happening on that front. Hey, maybe the Rams are in the process of bringing a tackle on board. Out here from Rams Up.